going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Grave. I'm your host, Casey. This week we've got four movies that we're going to be talking about. Toxic Avenger 2025, Weapons 2025, As Above, So Below 2014, and Skinamarink 2022. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this episode is basically brought to you by the Dorito Nachos that they're selling at Regal Cinemas now, because I went to the movie theater 3 times for this episode, and those Dorito Nachos are freaking delicious. I got them every single time I went. And I've got I go to a Regal movie theater, and I've got like a little card or a digital card that I get points and stuff. And basically, like every 2 times I go to the movie theater, I get free nachos. And I really like nachos. You can't see me right now, but I'm a husky boy. I like my nachos. I like my fake cheese product. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, reason I went to the movie theater 3 times, if you're counting, only 2 of those movies are still in the movie theater. Weapons, I went and saw twice. I saw it once by myself, Dorito nachos included, and I went and saw it with my wife afterwards because I thought it was kind of a movie that she would probably wind up enjoying. So we packed up, went back, and I saw it for a second time. There's a lot of stuff that you catch when you see that one a second time. We'll get into it a little bit later, kind of the more finer details of the movie without spoilers, obviously. But anyways, Weapons I saw twice in the movie theater. Toxic Avenger I saw once. And we'll start out with Toxic Avenger, I guess. So Toxic Avenger 2025, starring Peter Dinklage, Kevin Bacon, Elijah Wood. I usually try to get some information on like the budget for the movie and how much it's made. Obviously, with it being the first weekend, the amount that is made isn't really applicable. I think it's pulled in like 1.25 million or something like that, which for an opening weekend, I don't know that that's that great, but it was a somewhat limited release because I had to go to a little bit further away movie theater to see it. And I couldn't find any information on what the budget of the movie is. So I'm kind of just taking a stab in the dark saying maybe it's made back its budget with the 1.25 and hopefully everything from here on out is money in their pocket. It seems like they've had a really big push on like the marketing side of it though, so I'm probably inaccurate on that, but I hope so because I like to support the horror movies that come out even if they're not the best. And I'll go ahead and let you in on a little secret. I don't think this one's the best. I'm a big fan of the trauma movies, the Toxic Avenger, all that kind of stuff, Romeo and Juliet. I like all the trauma movies for the most part, but this one did not feel like a trauma movie. And I don't know particularly why that is. It had some decent gore effects, but a lot of it was not practical. It was some CGI effects in there. Um, Peter Dinklage does a pretty good job as Marvin Goose. Kevin Bacon is the main bad guy in it, and his brother is played by Elijah Wood. I don't know, something about this movie just didn't catch me right. It felt like it was neutered too much for a wide audience, which is if you've watched any trauma movies or especially like the original Toxic Avenger movies, you know that that's not what a trauma movie usually is. It's not generally gutted for a wide audience. And I feel like in this situation, in service of trying to make this more of a wide release movie, they did the source material a big injustice because Toxic Avenger has the potential to be like super gory and a lot of fun and kind of fucked up. And instead of doing that in this one, it was kind of gory, a little funny, a little fucked up. And so there's certain things that just hit me wrong. There's a specific scene right after uh, Marvin becomes the Toxic Avenger, which is not a spoiler. And this won't actually technically be a spoiler either, but I'm going to let you in on it, just kind of give you an idea of what the neutering I mean of the movie is. So in the first Toxic Avenger movie, there's a specific line that is a very well known line that, you know, if anyone's seen the Toxic Avenger, they probably remember the "I've never cornholed a blind, a blind bitch before." Um, and so in this movie, they had the same diner scene and all that stuff, and the guy that you would expect to say that line in a remake says, "I've never core," and then they stop it, and he gets killed by the Toxic Avenger. And so that one scene that I'm talking about, where instead of actually coming out and saying the what everybody would agree is like a really heinous, fucked up line, like that's a terrible thing to say about someone. No one's going to argue with that. But it is a very Toxic Avenger trauma type thing to say in a movie. And so instead of doing that, they cut it back and only got out the first parts. That way, it was kind of like a wink to the fans of, yeah, we're going to say it, and then they don't actually say it. And the entire movie, from the gore side of it, from pretty much every aspect, it just felt like they just weren't willing to go far enough to be a Toxic Avenger movie. And this is even billed in the theater as unrated. So I don't know how. I mean, this would be an R-rated movie all day, every day. They just slapped unrated on it to, I guess, uh, kind of garner a little bit more interest than it would have naturally had. But as far as being an unrated movie, this is not what you typically think of when you think of an unrated movie. There's some gore effects that, yeah, I guess could push you past an R rating. But if you've seen any of the Saw movies in the movie theater or anything along those lines, this doesn't even come close to that for the most part. Maybe a couple of the CGI scenes kind of catch up to it, but very, very little. Um, Peter Dinklage does a good job as the Toxic Avenger. Like I said, so the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie, I guess, maybe a little bit more than that, he's out of makeup. He's just Marvin, and he does a really good job of acting like this timid, kind of skittish guy. And I really enjoyed those scenes more than when they actually get him in the Toxic Avenger makeup, because it really takes away from his ability to emote. And I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if someone told me that Peter Dinklage wasn't actually in the makeup for most, if not all, of the Toxic Avenger scenes. I'm hoping that he was in there, and I would suspect that at some point they'll come out and say that he was in it for most of the movie. But I also wouldn't be surprised at all if you told me that he never once put on the makeup and that was another actor, and then they did his audio separately, because there's several times where like the audio doesn't quite match what's being said with the mouth, or it's got a little bit of lag to it, and you can just tell like, okay, this was done after the fact. Um, and yeah, when he's in the Toxic Avenger makeup, there's something about it that just comes across as like a one of those crappy old um like a ninja movie or something like that, where they're, I think it's called ADR, but I don't know that for sure, so don't hold me to it. But it's like they're dubbing over it after the fact. And if you watch trauma movies, you know that that's also a big thing in trauma movies. But this was not. This didn't feel like it was done for being a trauma movie. It feels like it was done because Peter Dinklage wasn't in the makeup. And like I said, I could be completely wrong on that. And if I'm wrong on it, I'm wrong on it. And it's just, he just didn't work in the makeup for me. It also felt very robotic when he was in the makeup. I guess that with like the prosthetics and everything on, it kind of felt like a Batman original 80s Batman situation where he's very, can only move in certain directions and turn his head a little bit. So I kind of got that feeling from it. But overall, Peter Dinklage did fine. It was fun to hear him as the Toxic Avenger, and it was a lot of fun to see him as Marvin towards the beginning. I had some really good scenes with like a kind of psychedelic him transforming thing that I had a lot of fun with, and I thought was really interestingly shot. But yeah, Peter Dinklage, fine. Kevin Bacon, if I don't know what happened with this man, because to begin with, I thought Kevin Bacon was going to be fantastic as like a villain in the Toxic Avenger. I was like, man, this would be really cool, but he does. It's almost like just phoning it in for a paycheck. He shows up at the beginning of the movie and he's just wearing like a bathrobe and like his abs are showing, and it's kind of to make his character come across as more douchey, I guess, which is cool, and that's all fine. But it's like Kevin Bacon did not give a single shit the entire movie about whether or not it was going to do good. It's like he just showed up for the paycheck. And surprisingly, Elijah Wood, same way. He plays his brother. And I watched some interviews where they were talking about like, oh yeah, he takes inspiration from the Penguin from Batman Returns, and he names a couple of other things he takes inspiration from. I don't know where any of that got lost in translation. Maybe that's on the cutting room floor or something, but it was more like Elijah Wood in some makeup with like a little bit of a hunched back, not really putting forth very much effort, which is, like I said, surprising because the interview I saw, they all seemed really, really interested in the movie. Kevin Bacon wasn't there, notably. So there was no, traveling promotion or anything on the Kevin Bacon end that I saw. Elijah Wood was there, though, so it's surprising to me that he seemed like he didn't put forth very much of an effort for it. But those kinds of things happen. So let's see what else I got in my notes here. Couple of decent scenes. Felt like a cheap imitation of the original. We already went over that. Gore effects, like we talked about, is a lot of CGI. I mean, just littered with CGI and like not even good CGI on top of that. Like it was the shitty, like if you've ever seen blood splatter into the scene, into the screen type of thing, that's what it felt like. There were a couple of good prosthetics and a couple of interesting creature transformations, but at the end of the day, it all just felt like a reason to remake a property and hopefully make some money with it. And I'm afraid, based on especially this past weekend where it only brought in 1.25, with how much of a push they've had for, everybody get the fuck out and go see it. That's their words. I don't think it's going to wind up pulling off as much as they would have wanted to. But Toxic Avenger 2025, overall out of 10, I'm going to give it a 5.5. I think it was a little bit above average as far as a theatrical release goes, but just barely. And honestly, it was mostly carried by Peter Dinklage over that line because Kevin Bacon certainly didn't do any of the heavy lifting on it. So yeah, we'll call Toxic Avenger 5.5 out of 10. If you are really into horror movies and supporting horror movies, it's tough for me to say that you should go see it in the movie theater because, it's honestly probably not worth the money to go see it in the movie theater. But the way that I think about a lot of these things is that without supporting this kind of stuff, we wouldn't wind up getting a Terrifier 2, a Terrifier 3, um, that kind of stuff. So I try to support as much as I can. And I've got a way where I don't have to pay for like a full price movie ticket every time. They've got this thing called, this is going to be, I guess, paid promotion because I already mentioned their nachos. They're not actually paying me though. Regal has this thing where you pay $25 a month and you get unlimited movies. So it's not a difficult thing for me to be like, okay, I'm going to go essentially see this movie for free on my subscription plan. Whereas if you don't have that, you'd be paying $15 to go see what, in my opinion, is a subpar Toxic Avenger movie. So do what you will with it. If you really want to support the horror and all that kind of stuff, go see it. If not, wait for it to come out. I'm sure it'll be on Trauma Now or whatever it's called, or I think it's Bloody Disgusting or Screenbox. We'll probably also have it soon. So, Toxic Avenger 2025, 5.5 out of 10. And next up, we've got Skinamarink from 2022. This one I watched on Shudder. A little bit of information I was able to find on it. It's got a budget of $15,000 and it made a box office of 2.1 million, which fantastic. Like that's, you're getting into Blair Witch Project territory there, where like they went in on a shoestring budget and they made like 100 times or whatever would wind up being their budget. And I realized this is nowhere near that kind of turnaround as far as the movie goes. But 2.1 million on a $15,000 budget, that's still really, really solid. And then I know they've had like a Blu-ray release, a couple of them maybe. So it's made pretty decent money. I didn't like it, so I'll go ahead and tell you that right now. It was not, for whatever reason, it was just not my kind of movie. I generally love found footage, and I generally enjoy experimental type movies, and this is definitely what you would qualify as an experimental horror movie. And I think in like my looking up like box office and stuff like that on, I've even seen it described other places like that. It's really experimental, almost to a fault. And if you've ever seen anything like a Harmony Korine movie, Gummo, Trash Humpers, that kind of stuff, it felt to me the way it felt the first couple of times I saw those kinds of movies, except it's not quite as well executed in my opinion. And it doesn't, I guess you call it lean in hard enough on it. The whole movie, as far as I can remember, it's got two kids that are actors in it, and it's got two adults that play parents, and then there may be someone that's playing like the entity in the movie. Uh, Quick little synopsis on it. So the movie starts out with these kids waking up, and all the doors and the windows in their house are either disappeared or in the process of disappearing, which for a kid, because I think these kids are like 8, 10, 12 years old, somewhere around there, like that can be a very scary thought and a very creepy thing. And if you were like, if I showed this to my kids, for example, I can guarantee you it would probably creep them out to a certain extent. But when you've seen enough found footage movies that you've seen it done so much better and more effectively, it's really hard for me to get behind this one. Um, there were a couple of scenes that got me as far as like jump scares, because that's really what this one leans into, outside of building like a general atmosphere of dread. And I will give it credit on that. So, not knowing very much about the movie at all, and I started watching this once, maybe a couple of years ago, and I got 10, 15 minutes into it, and I was just like, I'm not really feeling this. And I went on and I just watched something else instead. But this time I sat down and I committed the hour and a half, whatever it was, to it. And I'm glad I watched it. And I think that watching the entire movie and not getting just thrown off by the first 10 or 15 minutes kind of helps it, because it lets you live in this world where it's completely built out around you, and you're kind of more allowed to get engrossed in the whole situation that these kids find themselves in. Um, the kid actors are mostly fine. It's all done more through audio than showing the kids, outside of a couple of scenes. Um, Dang, I don't know if you heard that. That was my stomach growling. Good lord. Sorry about that. Probably didn't hear it though, and I'm just talking like a lunatic. But anyways, the kids do fine. It's kind of a lot of baby talk acting, where they put on like the little lisps that kids have and that kind of stuff, and um, babble talk. I don't know if babble talk's the right word for it. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's just young kids talking like toddlers do, I guess would be the way to say it. The parents show up at a couple of points throughout the movie, and there's, like I said, a couple of jump scares, but for the most part, it's really just boring, like laughably boring. Um, there's a couple of scenes where you get a tiny bit of blood, but this really isn't that kind of movie. It's more just about building the atmosphere and everything going on in the movie, and for them, for what they were going for, I can see people that enjoy like experimental movies and this specific type of found footage, because it's not your average found footage movie. For this specific type of found footage movie, I could see people enjoying it. And from what I was reading about, people are kind of divided on kind of either loving it or hating it. Unfortunately, I fall on the hating it side of things, and that happens. It's not that big of a deal. Uh, so I'm not going to waste too much time on this one. I'm just going to give it a 2.5 out of 10. I thought some of the visuals were pretty cool. I thought the world building was pretty cool. But outside of that, there's really nothing here for me. So I don't want to waste your time chit-chatting about a movie that I didn't really enjoy. Next, we're going to talk about Weapons 2025. Budget of $35 million, box office of $234 million so far. Stars Josh Brolin and Julia Garner. And the last two movies I've been kind of meh on. But let me tell you something. Weapons 2025 is something that you should try to go see in the theater if you can. Try not to get it spoiled, because if you let yourself get spoiled on it, you're going to be really, really disappointed. Because I can see. So I went and saw it twice in the movie theater. Like I said, I saw it once by myself, and the mystery and everything really got me. And I was like, man, this is a really, really good movie. And then I went back and I saw it with my wife. And there is something that's diminished upon repeat viewings of the movie, where kind of knowing where everything's going, it takes away from it a lot. But you can still enjoy it a lot, because there's all these little intricacies throughout the movie that after you've seen it one time and you can kind of relax and know where everything's going and kind of pick apart scenes a little bit, there's a lot of things in there that you'll find that are like, oh man, that's really interesting, that's really funny, that's really cool. Oh, this is going to come back later. It's a lot of fun, and it's told in a Tarantino, what I refer to as like a Tarantino kind of style. If you've seen Pulp Fiction, where the movie goes forward and then bounces back all over the place, it's done like that, and it's done really, really, really well. Like, I can't describe to you how well it's done, because every time that you get the story advanced a little bit, you get like a hard like snap cut, and then it kind of resets the night almost, or resets the story, and then you go follow another character for a little while and see their perspective on things, and you get maybe an extra I don't guess minutes is the way to describe it, but you get like a little bit of extra exposition. It's almost like a leapfrogging story where, like, okay, we've gotten this far with this character, and then boom, we're back, and we're with a character that just interacted with her, seeing things from his perspective, and it goes a little bit further, and you catch up to where the story was in the previous set of scenes you were in, but it goes just a little bit further, and then boom, it does it again. I think it does it maybe 5 times, and I think in the movie theater, especially in the first screening I was at, where it was a lot of people, there was a lot of people in there. Um, I heard a couple of groans after the second or third time they did that, and I'm not used to at the movie theater that I go to. I don't know if it's that people aren't really vocal in movies, but I don't usually get that kind of stuff. But there were a couple of people in the movie theater like, "Oh God, we're going back and we're having to go through all of this again." And I didn't feel that way about it. Like, I enjoyed having the story get advanced just a tiny little bit, and then getting the proverbial onion layers peeled back and being like, oh, that's what's happening here. This is why this is happening. This is who's involved with this. They did a really, really fantastic job of slowly, slowly letting you in on the story. I will say that probably about 3/4 of the way through the movie, you pretty much know where it's going. Like, it's still a good mystery, and there's a couple of little twists and turns that are taking, but you can kind of see where, okay, I can see where this is all going to end up. And then in the last few minutes of the movie, it kind of turns that on its ear, and it goes just into batshit crazy territory, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a really, really funny movie. Like, I really enjoyed that part of it, because there's several times where something is happening, and you shouldn't really be laughing, but you're just absolutely laughing your ass off. Josh Brolin and Julia Garner were both fantastically, perfectly cast in this movie. Julia Garner, I've only seen her in a few things, and I haven't really been a fan of her in the few things I've seen her in, but I've recognized, like, okay, she's a good actress. In this, she plays a teacher that all these kids have disappeared on, and that has her own underlying problems completely separate from what's happening with the kids. And man, she was a fantastic actress, and really, really sold the role, and you believe, like, okay, this is really a good person, but a very flawed person on top of that. Whereas Josh Brolin plays a father of one of the missing kids, and he's also definitely a very flawed character, but his flaws are more, I guess, forgivable would be the way to say it, because his flaws are mostly brought on by the fact that this stuff that's taking place in the movie has been inflicted upon him. Whereas Julia Garner's character, yes, some of the stuff that's going on in the movie has been inflicted upon her, but it's also a lot of things that are coming back to haunt her from past experiences and past things she's done. Uh, so yeah, acting wise, and there's several like smaller actors in the movie that uh, also do really fantastic jobs. The little boy in it, kids in movies are usually very hit or miss for me. He was 100% a hit. The parents, there's an aunt that shows up that's all really interesting. Some decent jump scares. I think there's a couple of times in the movie where it gets a little bit outside of its own, not narrative, I don't guess would be the way to say it, but it kind of gets a little bit too big for its own britches. It starts getting like delving into things a little bit too deeply and going a little bit too far in the whole, um be the way to say it, into the whole meaning of certain things, and it's very heavy handed at certain points with, like, oh, hey, look, here's this thing that's happening, and here's a little bit of foreshadowing, and you're kind of watching it, and at the time, especially on a first viewing, it's like, I don't really understand what this has to do with anything, and then you catch up to it you catch up and figure out what's going on later, and you think back and you're like, that was a really heavy-handed way of doing this that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And if you watch the movie, you're probably going to know which scene I'm talking about. It's a scene with Josh Brolin, uh, where he's going through a house. When you get to that set of scenes, that's what I'm referring to. So yeah, Weapons 2025, overall fantastic movie. Seems like it's making really good money. So I hope that they get to keep making these kinds of movies. 8.5 out of 10. Absolutely loved it. Very, very good movie. And for our last movie that we're going to be talking about, we've got As Above, So Below from 2014. The budget that I found is listed as $5 to $10 million, so I guess there's some kind of ambiguity there. Box office, it made $41.8 million. Stars Perdita Weeks and Ben Feldman as the two main characters of the movie. This is a found footage horror movie, and it is one of my absolute favorite found footage horror movies that I've ever seen in my life. I watch this at least once or twice a year, and for the most recent viewing I did on this, I actually watched it with my kids last night, and we watched it in a really good setting where it was like pitch black dark and the volume turned up and everything, and they loved it, and I also love it. So it was really fun for me to get to pass it along to them and be like, hey, you guys have watched Blair Witch Project, you guys have watched this, you guys have watched that. Here's one of my absolute favorites that I think you can handle now. And they did. There's nothing in it that's gratuitous sexuality or anything like that. Not a whole lot of cursing, if I remember correctly. There's some blood and guts, and for like really little kids, if they're affected by like demonic type stuff, it would probably affect them. My kids are kind of, we've had a lot of discussions. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, where my kids are very aware of like these are just movies. None of this stuff is real. Blood, guts, gore doesn't affect them because they've seen all of the behind the scenes stuff where it shows people like getting colored corn syrup put on them and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't the kind of movie that would affect kids particularly badly unless they're super sensitive to like demonic, uh, demonic possession or demons and ghosts and hell and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the movie itself goes, for the first like half an hour of the movie, you're getting to know these characters, particularly lead actress, lead actor, and for whatever reason, both of the characters really, really resonated with me. The male character in the movie, uh, his hobby is the way they refer to it in the movie is to go and find old places and break into them. So, like when you first meet him, he's broken into a clock tower, or I'm sorry, a church tower that has the bells and everything that ring at certain times, but it hasn't functioned in like 250 years, and so he goes in to all these different places, and his hobby is that he goes in and he fixes the broken things in them. So when you meet him in this, he's trying to fix the bells to this chapel, and I don't know what it was, but there was something about his character that was really fun and interesting and very likable. The actor played it really well as being a very likable character. The female lead, once again, she's um, a very flawed character, just like in the character from Weapons that we were just talking about. And she's had a lot of stuff that's happened to her, and a lot of it's been brought on by her. But she's kind of an Indiana Jones archetype, I would say, because she's kind of following this quest that her dad had laid out and was trying to figure out before something happens to him. And when we first meet her in the movie, she's she's in Iran, I believe it was, trying to find like a statue that's got some information to be able to decrypt a code on something else she's looking at. It's a little bit convoluted and all that stuff, but that's the basic gist of it. And so they're getting ready to bomb this whole, or to blow up this whole cave system. And so she's in there, and it does a really good job of building suspense of her having to get out before the caves are destroyed. Um, the way the movie is shot is really good. There's something about it, and I don't know exactly what it is. I can't put my finger on, but it feels like a slightly stepped up version of found footage. Um, it doesn't ever have a scene or anything where somebody isn't holding a camera, or I don't know, like steps into third person, I guess is the way I would describe it. But it may just be that it's really, really well shot and they've got GoPro cameras on their heads and stuff like that. It may just be that side of it, but it's really clean looking and it's really interesting. And there's some effects in the movie that once you start getting, especially later on in the movie, there's a few effects. I'm like, I have no idea how they just did this in real time because it's a very interesting set of scenes towards the end that happens that, honestly, from like a physics standpoint, don't really make a whole lot of sense. And you'll kind of, if you watch the movie, get the idea of what I'm talking about. But long story short, the movie is about a girl that's trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, which, yes, just like in Harry Potter, I guess. It's not actually, but it's the, I'm assuming, the same Philosopher's Stone um, that her dad had been searching for a long time. And they find out that basically it's in the catacombs in, what was it, Paris? I think it's Paris. We're going to call it the Catacombs of Paris. And I found out in doing my research for the movie, this is the first film that ever got permission to shoot in the catacombs of Paris. And you can really tell that in the movie because it's very clear that a lot of things that you're looking at are not set pieces anywhere. Like this is an actual set of catacombs somewhere. And it's really, really well done. A really good looking movie. Acting, outside of like a couple of hiccups here and there, the acting is all stellar across the board, and you believe that you're actually in this quest with these people trying to find the Philosopher's Stone. The only thing that I would say that I really didn't like about the movie is that there's a lot of times in movies where you've got a particularly magical element, like a Philosopher's Stone, which is supposedly a stone that can turn base metals into gold. So it's a very fantastic, magical concept. They leave some ambiguity to it, so that way you don't have to suspend disbelief so much as to think, okay, this is a real thing that's happening. This stone is 100% real and does everything they said. In this movie, they don't really do that. I won't tell you which way it is, but well, I guess I kind of have to. So yeah, I'm gonna have to tell you. So there's some magical properties to this stone that are left unambiguous, and you kind of just have to be willing to suspend disbelief to not only everything that's going on where they're descending into the catacombs, and it's done really similar to some of Dante's Inferno type stuff of descending into hell and that kind of thing. And it's done, that part of it is done very well, where there's some stuff that could be taken as like maybe they're having, um, I don't know, it could be taken as like maybe there's something in the cave that's making them have uh, mental fog, or maybe they're just turned around at several points, you could think. But then it goes far enough to later on in the movie to where you're like, okay, this is actual, basically what I would call magic shit that's happening. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The things that we're currently witnessing on the screen have to be magical. And to go even a step further, the stone turns out to have basically all of the properties that it was ever said to have, and it's literally a magic rock, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And for that part of the movie, separate from like the way the movie is made and the scares and all that stuff, I didn't love that part of it, and that's the main reason that I'm going to take away, I guess, what you would call takeaway points from the movie. It's because I don't like having to suspend that much disbelief for the movie to just be willing to say, okay, I just believe in magic shit now. And for a found footage movie, it's kind of hard to get to that point, especially for this kind of found footage movie, where it feels like it was more of a story about her just going into the catacombs trying to find this rock, and you don't know if the rock's actually what people say it is or not, but it is definitely something that there's a mythology behind, and that she wants to complete her father's quest, basically. Uh, there's a couple of CGI scenes in it that are really good, and there's one in particular that is not involving a car. And so when you get to that scene, that's another one that kind of just took me out of it. It's like we went just a step too far, and I don't necessarily understand why we had to go here, but they did. And for the story side of it, and in fact, I told you I watched it with my kids. My kids watched it, and they were on board with it, and they thought it was really interesting. So it may just be that I'm just a jaded old horror fan or something like that, and I don't like magical shit in my horror movies for the most part. Demons and all that kind of stuff for me are different than magic. But this one, if you have trouble suspending disbelief for magic, you might have a little bit of trouble with this one. But I would totally recommend you being willing to suspend the disbelief or just go through the movie anyways, because the story side of it and the characters, all that stuff is really, really fantastically done. So for my out of 10 score, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I'm pretty surprised actually that this wasn't my highest rated movie out of the set that I did, because especially Weapons, I really enjoyed Weapons. But if you told me that I only had one movie out of this group to just watch on repeat over and over again, it would easily be As Above, So Below. And I think it's just the magical element of it takes me out of it. So I know I've said that a lot of times, but I want you to understand why I take off as much as I did. Because outside of the magical side of things in this would have probably been like closer into the 9.5 range. But because of how much suspension of disbelief you have to get over to get through the movie, I'm going to go a little bit lower. So 8 out of 10 for As Above, So Below 2014. And that is our 4 movies, everybody. So starting on my next episode, I decided that I'm going to go back through the VHS movies. I'm going to probably do it over 2 episodes, where I'm going to go through all of the VHS movies that have been released in anticipation of the next VHS movie that's coming out October 3rd, I think it is, which is called VHS Halloween. So pretty excited for that. Looking forward on going through all those movies with you guys. And another thing where I love found footage, and I especially love anthology movies. So I've got a lot of love and a lot of passion for a lot of these movies, but there's also some turds in there. I'll go ahead and let you know that. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been To the Grave. If you want to reach out to me to chit chat about movies or anything like that, you can go. You can email me at tothegravehorrorpodcast@gmail.com. I'm also on Slasher at Casey To The Grave. So if any of you guys want to hop on and talk about movies or anything, I'd be happy to do it. I love talking about this kind of stuff with anybody that wants to. So thank you guys very much for tuning in.